Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Ash.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to another special and slightly different video. We saw a couple of weeks ago the F1 debate show on one of their feature episodes on Saturday decided to put out who they thought were at risk of losing their seat in 2021. And we're going to take that idea and put a little twist on things. As you know, we all like to share ideas in this community. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through the grid 20-1 with the drivers on there and who we think is under pressure this season and who we think is relatively pressure-free, shall we say. The kind
more relaxed.
Yeah, a more relaxed environment. So, we're going to go straight in and get cracked into that. So, Ash, do you want to start us off with our first driver?
So, we're going to be starting at Williams and Nicholas Latifi. Now, I think he's under pressure. He's taken a step up and he's got to perform at a higher level than Kubica did last season for him.
I think he's under pressure as well, but what does give him more of a comfort blanket is the amount of investment and backing that he's brought to Williams, which, you know, has relieved it a little bit. But he is certainly under pressure to perform better than Kubica did in comparison to George Russell and to help drive that team forward. George Russell, for me, the pressure is off in terms of him. Fantastic rookie season he had. Unless he has an absolutely catastrophic season, which, you know, we're taking there isn't really backing to go. You could say the only pressure that's on him is can he perform to the level that convinces Mercedes to sign him in 2021.
I'm going to say this year that George Russell is actually under pressure. I'd say last year he didn't because how poor the Williams was performing, but I don't think going into his second year in F1 he's going to be as given as much benefit of the doubt with regards to the car's performance. He is going to have to carry on dominating Latifi the way he was at Kubica to show his ability, because the car's not going to help him in that aspect.
Very true. We move on to our second team, which is Haas.
And let's start with Romain Grosjean for this one. I'm going to say under pressure. He got a 1-year contract extension after a lot of talk about him not being offered that. You don't go from, we're going to put all of our money behind this. You don't go from not having 100% confidence to, we're putting all of our money behind this guy. So I think he's in a position where he's got to start kicking on with performances and go back to showing that ability that we've both agreed in the past that he's got, and try and avoid some of the incidents. Admittedly, last year reliability was the main concern, but that's not his fault.
For me, Romain Grosjean is the most under pressure driver of the 2020 season. With his age, now obviously not at the youngest part of his career, and obviously recent years' performance, although, you know, 2019 a lot of things were out of his control. And obviously I think that's where the team have given him some form of leeway from that front. But yes, the pressure to perform and be at a level that Haas believe he can keep taking them forward and get to where they want to be is massive for Romain Grosjean. And his teammate, Kevin Magnussen, for me is also under pressure, because in a midfield team like that, I don't feel and especially where Haas were and how they dropped off, yes, I think they'd be unlikely to want to change both drivers. But if Roman does perform and Magnussen doesn't, it immediately makes them go, do we need to go in a change of direction from there? So Kevin Magnussen still has to perform to a good level to, you know, keep that seat.
I'm going to say that Kevin Magnussen hasn't got any pressure on him this season. Because of his age, I feel that Haas are going to back him in any discussions, even if he has a slightly off season. I feel as if he's the driver that they will pick to build the team around. The only time I would say the pressure's going to start building is if an American driver takes that step and it's like, actually, they can take that step into Formula One, which at the moment, I think we're still a few seasons away from there being a driver of that level that can just jump into a car and perform.
And we now move on to the next team, and that is Alfa Romeo. So Ash, starting us off again, who are we going to look at first?
We'll go Giovinazzi. I'm going to say no pressure on him this year. I don't think there's going to be the big change in 2021 with some of the smaller teams, especially with a driver like Giovinazzi, who towards the end of last season was starting to build up that confidence and at times was outperforming Kimi Raikkonen. So I just don't think there's going to be that need to move him on as quickly as was first thought.
I do think there's a lot of pressure on Giovinazzi. I think with the young talent lurking in F2, a number of Ferrari academy drivers who will be itching for a chance in that Ferrari-owned Alfa Romeo seat, and also the pressure that if he performs well enough, there potentially is a vacancy at Ferrari. That he might go and be a number 2 to Charles Leclerc. So the pressure on himself to kind of, as an Italian, to drive for the Italian team, which is Ferrari in Formula 1, it would be pretty huge for him. His teammate, Kimi Raikkonen, absolutely no pressure. Nothing. Kimi will do what Kimi does. He will try and perform to the best of his ability, and he will come at the end of the season. If he wants to carry F1, I imagine there will be a seat for him in F1. If he doesn't want to continue in F1, I imagine he'll happily walk away, not go thing. There is no pressure for Kimi Raikkonen to perform.
I agree, no pressure at all, and even if there was, Kimi wouldn't show it. So yeah, I think it's much the same. If he wants to stay on in F1 at the end of the season, a team will take him. It doesn't matter which team they are. You would take Kimi Raikkonen. He's that level of driver.
Fourth team up for discussion is the Pink Racing Point with Sergio Perez and Lance Stroll. Who are we going to look at first?
We'll go Lance Stroll, and I'm going to say he is under a lot of pressure. With the Aston Martin takeover and the rebrand of next season, I think Lawrence Stroll will actually look at potentially being a bit more ruthless with the way the team is run, and if Lance is not performing, I don't think he'll have any issues with saying, you've got to go.
I agree, but his dad's factor and his backing within the team means that I feel Lance isn't under as much pressure as what Romain Grosjean is. I feel like they could perform to similar levels that would just be enough to kind of scrape the barrel, and Haas might still axe Grosjean, but on that level, if Lance shows just enough, Racing Point would be inclined to keep him. That means we look at his teammate, Checo Perez, and for me, he is so heavily embedded in that team, and I think he's so at the forefront of their new chapter in Aston Martin. There is no pressure on him, and from Lance Stroll, not like Esteban Ocon, who was pushing him in his 2 seasons there, was Force India to become Racing Point. I do feel like Checo, this will just be relax, go out and perform, get strong performances like you've been doing for us for years.
He signed a 5-year contract last season. If that's telling me that there's no real pressure to perform, then nothing else will. So yeah, he's pretty safe in his seat.
And in 6th place, AlphaTauri. The new AlphaTauri rather than Toro Rosso, which they were known last year. So who are we going to look at first in terms of them, Ash?
Let's go Kvyat.
Okay.
I'm going to say out of the Red Bull AlphaTauri combo, he's under the most pressure. Last season, he had the disappointment of not getting the step up to the Red Bull team, which you could argue he was the more experienced driver, so should have been given, but didn't get it. And the minute that happened, his performance dropped off. He just didn't perform in the second half of the season after that happened. So the pressure was building already, and it's now at a level where I could see him losing his seat at the end of the season if he doesn't start the season running, basically.
Kvyat, for me, again, agree with Ash. He is under pressure because he's he's not old, but he's starting to age. He's starting to go from young prospect talent to he's now had enough years in Formula One. I think 2014 was his first season that he was first involved in F1, so been around a long time within the sport now. If he can't impress a midfield team enough to take him, or AlphaTauri don't want to use him to nurture a youngster, it is difficult, and he is starting on the back foot because Gasly certainly gained the advantage in that pairing in the second half of last season. And that moves us on to Pierre Gasly, and he for me is also under pressure. Yes, he did have a fantastic second half of last season, but he also had probably the worst first half of the season out of anybody of the F1 grid in terms of the machinery that he was in. And so he still needs to perform, and for me needs to prove to a midfield team that he's worth a shot, because I don't see his long-term future within AlphaTauri or Red Bull.
I'm going to go the other way and say that I don't feel there's a lot of pressure on him. Yes, last season started poorly for him, but he's back in a team that he knows well and has been performing well in. There won't be anyone stepping up from AlphaTauri to Red Bull next season. That's, well, my driver predictions, I said there would be, but I don't think there will, honestly. And you're not going to switch both drivers for a youngster to try and nurture him in F1. I feel Pierre Gasly would be the better driver to have to help develop another one than Kvyat. So I feel he's under no real pressure in the team at the moment.
Very interesting indeed. And we move on to our fifth team, the kind of halfway point in this, and that is Renault. And who are we going to start off in the Renault team?
Let's go Danny Rick. Change it up. We've been going number 2s, number 1 drivers. We'll go Danny Rick this time. And I think there's a lot of pressure on Daniel Ricciardo this season. Main reason, next year there could be a seat at either Ferrari, potentially Red Bull, if there's the performance clauses in Verstappen's contract, as there no doubt is. I don't see him not of negotiating that back in. So he's had his time at a big team, took a step back to Renault because he bought into a project that hasn't really come to fruition. But Daniel Ricciardo is one of those drivers where if you're a big team looking for a driver that can lead you or support, you'll take that opportunity. So there's a lot of pressure on him, as he could get the step up back to one of the top teams.
I agree. There is the pressure of that for Daniel Ricciardo, but there is also the pressure of new teammate Esteban Ocon. And Daniel Ricciardo's stock is still very high and still very well thought of. But if he gets beaten this season by his teammate Esteban Ocon, then obviously that lowers his stock, and then any potential future shot at a big seat would be gone, and his kind of options would certainly dry up very quickly. So there is huge pressure on Daniel Ricciardo to keep going what he's doing. And then Esteban Ocon, again huge pressure. He's been out of the sport. A lot of people thought wrongly he lost that Force India seat. You know, you certainly feel that he was unlucky not to beat Sergio Perez in that inter-team battle, having beaten him in the head-to-head in both qualifying and race. It was just, Checo maximised the points that he could in his points finishes he got. He's got a point to prove. A lot of people think of him highly. A lot of people are a bit like, they're a bit indifferent about him. Ocon has a real chance here against a very experienced, very talented teammate to really make his stamp on F1 and go, I'm a serious driver, or people just think that he's average.
I agree, he's under a lot of pressure. Main reason, the Mercedes factor. Everyone last year was saying, oh well, if Bottas loses the seat, Ocon will get it. And he didn't. That's twice now he's been overlooked for a Formula 1 seat. He's back in, and he now needs to show that ability that everyone is discussing around him and actually get it out on track. And I think for him, he needs to be beating Ricciardo this season for him to be able to turn around and say, I've performed at a level that's high enough.
And now we move on to the McLaren seat, and I don't know, we might potentially be able to do this because I don't think either are under pressure. Do you?
Sort of.
Oh, well, we'll stick to our normal format then.
We'll go with the sort of to start off with. Carlos Sainz. Now, maybe controversial. When I explain, you'll probably think, no. So, Carlos Sainz is in both camps here. He's under pressure, but he's not. Now, he's under pressure because his name is being touted as a potential replacement for Sebastian Vettel at Ferrari. Now, anyone that is looking to move into a Ferrari seat is automatically under pressure. The reason he's not under pressure is he has got the fallback that McLaren will definitely give him a new contract if he wants to stay, because I don't see them breaking up the team unless one of the drivers is poached by another team. So, he is, but he isn't.
For me, Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, both under no pressure whatsoever. Obviously, you know, all of these are bar drivers having catastrophic seasons. But, you know, even if both have an average season, McLaren are invested in the project. They believe in both. Yes, if they poach, there is that pressure on Carlos Sainz to obviously achieving best of the rest last year. Can he do the same this year? That comes with some sort of pressure, but for me, it's relatively easy, not under any sort of pressure. And Lando Norris for you?
No pressure. He'll just carry on as he is because McLaren will have him signed up for a long-term contract. I think the reason he was only given the 1-year extension was 2021, and then seeing options that are out there. But based on his performances last season and the way he's moulded that team, like he's fitted into that team well, I think this year he'll be given a 2, maybe 3-year contract with them.
And now Red Bull.
We'll start with Alexander Albon.
Sounds good.
A lot of pressure. He got given the seat last season, and yes, midway through it's difficult to adjust. He performed at a level that was expected of Pierre Gasly that he never got to, but he didn't really kick on. And the one I still look at is Brazil. He gave Hamilton enough room to make a dive. Yes, it was Hamilton's fault that the accident happened, but he shouldn't have been leaving that much room on the inside. It's not a corner where an overtake would often happen, but because of how wide he went, Hamilton was able to try. So he just needs to tidy up his performances. We said it about Lando Norris midway through last season. If he can tidy them up, he'll start to get nearer to that front 5, because it is almost 3 banks now. The front 5, Albon, everyone else. So
Alex Albon, for me, solid in his second half of the season in Red Bull. But if he does that and we get to the summer break and he's performed at a similar level, he is under massive pressure. Albon has to show that he's capable of fighting for podiums, not just on Ferrari and Mercedes making mistakes. He has to genuinely challenge, like when Daniel Ricciardo was in the team, so that they have both drivers putting pressure on at the front of the field, and he needs to be able to support Max Verstappen. At the moment, he's doing okay, and you get licensed because it was his rookie season and he had to deal with a lot in that rookie season. You know, he didn't think he was going to have an F1 career, suddenly thrown into Toro Rosso, then he's in a Red Bull halfway through the season. It was quite a kind of steep rise. Now it's to see whether he will sink or float in that position. And his teammate Max Verstappen, no pressure from Red Bull, but he will have pressure on himself to keep up the high levels that he had from last year. And if the car even has a sniff of a chance of pushing Lewis, he has the pressure of fighting for a title challenge.
For me, Max Verstappen is in a unique position where he's got 3 layers to this. Red Bull, no pressure at all. Pressure from himself and Jos Verstappen, a lot. He is going to be putting immense pressure on himself, and his dad is as well, as it's shown from negotiations for contracts. And then the external factors. Everyone in the F1 community expects him to be a world champion at some point, and he's still got the possibility of becoming the youngest world champion.
He has to do it this year, though.
Exactly. And that's where the pressure's going to come in. He's now in his 5th season in F1, where he has had 4 years of continually being the driver that will replace Hamilton as the world champion. He hasn't managed it yet because of the car, but that pressure from outside will continue to build. So yeah, I've gone from Carlos Sainz having a to a Max Verstappen where but yeah, it's one of those. Red Bull are not going to have any pressure on him because of the fact the team is his effectively. If he says something, Christian Horner says, when do you want it done by? That's effectively the relationship that Max Verstappen has with Red Bull.
Yeah.
So,
and very strong and positive relationship with Honda as well. And we now move on to our penultimate team, and that is Ferrari.
We'll start with Sebastian Vettel. Now, I feel he is one of those that has probably got the most pressure on himself this season. Coming from himself in one aspect, but also the fact that his contract is up at the end of the year. If he doesn't perform at a high enough level, I can see Ferrari saying, we've got plenty of youngsters, we can give someone else a chance, or Carlos Sainz is performing well, let's try him in a Ferrari. And if someone like Carlos Sainz is put into the Ferrari next year, there's not a seat open at a top team. And my view of Sebastian Vettel is I don't think he's in a stage of his career now where he would be happy to drop down to a lower team to stay in F1 like Kimi Raikkonen did, or like Fernando Alonso did when he went back to McLaren. So it's one of those where this could potentially be Sebastian Vettel's last season in F1 if he doesn't get the performances to secure another contract with Ferrari.
Out of the top teams, Sebastian Vettel is the one under the most pressure to perform. Being a 4-time world champion, having a young and more inexperienced teammate, he really should grip Ferrari by the hands. It doesn't matter that Charles Leclerc has a long-term contract. He should grip it back from Charles in his performances and show, I am still top dog at this team, and he has massive pressure to prove that. And like Ash said, it might end up, being his last year in F1. I personally think he enjoys racing too much, that he would find a way of staying in F1 even if it is not with Ferrari, but there is huge pressure on Sebastian Vettel. And his teammate, Charles Leclerc, no pressure really. He's got a long-term future, signed contract. He is the future of Ferrari, being with his age. They've certainly, put a lot of investment and a lot of intent putting that contract in for him and laying it down. No pressure whatsoever.
I agree, no real pressure. He's riding a wave of a very successful first season with Ferrari. On top of that, his rookie season in Formula 1 was up there with the best. He wasn't in a car to challenge, so you can't really compare his rookie season to, say, Villeneuve or Hamilton, who were runners-up. But he's got a long-term contract. He's one of those where, in all honesty, there's not a lot of pressure on him to perform. It's just if he goes on a bad run where things will then start to build. But at this moment in time, he won't be worried about his F1 future.
And the last team, of course, is Mercedes. And it'll be interesting to see who you pick first.
I'm going to go Valtteri Bottas. Because, in all honesty, I don't think he's under much pressure. I think Mercedes are resigned to the fact that their World Championship contender is Lewis Hamilton. They've got a driver in Valtteri Bottas who is there more than anything to secure them the World Championship. I don't think, in terms of whether or not he will be in Formula 1 next year, there's much pressure on him, because he is one of those drivers that a smaller team, not necessarily a smaller team, but like a team that's not performing at the higher level, would love to have him in their car for the development side of things. So if someone was to be dropped from a Williams, Racing Point, something like that, he's got the option to go into that seat. But Mercedes, they're going to keep the Hamilton-Bottas partnership going as long as possible until someone actually makes the decision that we want to start preparing long term for the future, and say a George Russell getting the step up.
I think Valtteri Bottas doesn't have any pressure from Mercedes because they're expecting Lewis to win. So anything that he does better than that is overachieving, really, for Valtteri Bottas. But in terms of retaining that Mercedes seat, for me, he has huge pressure. Ocon is still linked to Mercedes with Toto Wolff. It would be a surprise if he would come from Renault, but he is still an option linked in there. George Russell is the main man. He is the one that I really think is destined for that seat in 2021. I think they will make that decision with the new set of regulations to put their efforts behind a new driver, and that 2021 will be the closed chapter of the Hamilton-Bottas kind of dominance in the last 3. Well, it'll be 4 years by the end this one is over. And then you also have, very unlikely this one, Stoffel van Dorn. Is obviously just become the main reserve driver at Mercedes. If he goes on and wins the Formula E title this year, I think, they're 3 drivers that if they perform well, they will all be gunning for Valtteri Bottas' seat. And Stoffel is still young enough to be the future of Mercedes. It would be an interesting bracket, I think, within that. And he has to perform at an immense level to, really, for me, push Lewis all the way to be able to retain that seat. Otherwise, I think he's gone.
Okay.
Lewis Hamilton, no pressure. Only pressure is win a 7th title to match Lewis Hamilton's, Michael Schumacher's all-time record. That is the only bit of pressure that is on Lewis Hamilton this year.
Honestly, he's the one driver on the grid that he's got no pressure at all. He has got the least amount of pressure than anyone. If he doesn't win the championship this season, he's still a 6-time world champion. You pick any team on the grid, if Lewis Hamilton was to say to him, I feel like driving for you for 2021, they would bite your hand off. Even Ferrari would bite your hand off to have Lewis Hamilton. He has no pressure at all. If he wins the championship next year, then the pressure builds on him for 2021, because it's then going for beating Schumacher's record. This year, nothing at all. He can go out and enjoy himself.
Absolutely. It is almost a free hit in terms of it, but it is one that, the only pressure is maybe just the expectations that everyone expects him to do it. But, like Ash said, I don't think anyone would begrudge him. I think everyone would be quite glad if they saw a new champion. So there is no real pressure for Lewis to win. Obviously, other than die-hard Lewis Hamilton fans who were desperate to see him equal Michael Schumacher.
And probably Hamilton himself.
Yeah, well,
we should really take that aspect out, because they all put pressure on themselves.
Yeah, he goes without saying, I think, on that front. But there, guys, there has been our run-through of 20-1 on the F1 grid of who we feel is under pressure or not under pressure for the latest season of Formula 1. We would love to hear from you guys in the comments below, and maybe save you from going through all 20. Maybe do your top 5 guys who are under pressure and a reason why for the upcoming F1 2020 season. If you want to take the time to do 1 to 20, you're more than welcome to, but keep it simple on that one. Top 5 under pressure drivers. And if they're new around here or they haven't done so already, what can they do, Ash?
You can press the subscribe button, so our videos are going into your YouTube inbox, keeping you up to date with the videos that we're putting out. And if you press the bell icon, you'll get a notification when one goes live and see what topic we've decided to discuss in that one.
And we hope you've enjoyed the video, guys. If you have, don't forget to drop us a thumbs up. Lets us know that you're enjoying our content. And for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.